Nathan Wade visit you at the Yerty condo from the time you moved in until he was hired on November the 1st of 2021?
So I moved out of that condo, but during that time period, yeah, I'm sure he came to visit. He came to visit. I can remember us going, I think the restaurant's Lickety Split. I can remember him picking me up, going to Lickety Split and ordering some food and coming and sitting at my table and eating. So I remember times that he visited me at that condo, yes.
Okay, could you give us an approximation of how many times Mr. Wade visited you at the condo between the time you moved in and prior to November 1 of 2020?
I don't think often, but I don't want to speculate.
Can we say more than 5, more than 10?
I'm going to tell you the problem I'm having here. Let's say more than 10, but I'm not sure that that's even accurate. He certainly has come and picked me up, gone to grab some food to eat. I don't remember him being in that condo a lot.
Okay, that's your,
I'm sorry. You want a number, and what I don't want to do.
giving me your current and best recollection is all I'm asking for.
That's all I can give you, sir.
How many times did any of the prosecution team, how many times did Anna Cross come to that condo between the time you moved in and November 1st of 2021?
I don't think Anna's ever been to that condo.
What about any other prosecutor that's involved in the prosecution of this case?
I don't think any of them have.
Just Mr. Wade?
That's correct, sir.
But it was a lonely time.
Oh my God, that 2021, I have a lot of guilt about this time period in my life. Let me tell you why. But yes, it was a lonely time.
Okay.
I was very appreciative to the citizens for giving me this responsibility and this duty. But what I very, very quickly learned is that this is a very isolating job, and 2021 was a lonely time. I turned 50 in 2021. That's probably one of the worst birthdays I've ever had. I spent it alone. So I have a clear recollection of 2021 being lonely.
Okay. Did Mr. Wade ever visit you at the condo, the time period I'm talking about, prior to November of 2021, when Ms. Yerty was at the condo?
So Miss Yerty and me, we didn't share the condo at the same time.
So the answer would be no.
But we never stayed there together, so it's an impossibility.
It's an impossibility.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, Miss Yerty, because we need to get clarification on this. Miss Yerty stayed in that place. There may have been a time that me and Mr. Wade visited, like went and saw Miss Yerty, but me and Miss Yerty never lived there together. Just so we're clear.
Well, maybe that was clear, but I'm going to have to try again.
Okay.
Was Miss Yerty still living in the condo when you moved in?
Not a day.
Okay. So what I'm talking...
Another misrepresentation in this. We never lived together. I never lived with Miss Yerty.
My question, though, I'm trying to understand that after you moved in to the condo, Miss Yerty she was out of the condo, right?
She got a house.
That's all I'm asking. She's not in the condo.
We never stay, Miss Yerty and I never stay a day together in the condo. All of her stuff was out of the condo, and all my stuff, some of my stuff, not all of it obviously, was moved into the condo. So we never stayed there together. No, sir.
All right. So when I ask you about Mr. Wade visiting the condo when you were staying there,
yes.
Miss Yerty wasn't staying there, correct?
That would be correct, yes.
She wouldn't be at the condo, correct?
No, she would not have been.
It would be you and Mr. Wade alone at the condo, correct?
Yes.
That is, there weren't any other witnesses to Mr. Wade and you at the condo, correct?
Yes.
No security, none of your security detail.
I object. She said it was just her and Mr. Wade.
You made your point, Mr. Sadow. Let's move on to the next one.
Yes, Your Honor. Who in the prosecution team, prior to, I guess, the motion being filed by Defendant Roman, who in the prosecution team knew of your personal relationship, and now I'm talking romantic, with Mr. Wade?
So, sir, I am extremely private.
All I ask
No,
you
no,
is
no.
who knew. It's not, if you, the answer is no one knew, that's fine.
No.
I ask you who knew.
You answer,
me just tell
answer
you
it
this.
and then explain, Ms. Willis.
I am very private. When I supervised Mr. Body and Mr. McAfee, they didn't know who I was dating, but I can assure you I was dating somebody. So that I kept something private, that's my private life, is not any mystery to anyone. It's like a woman doesn't have the right to keep her private life private. And I'm speaking on this because there have been all these intimations.
You still haven't answered the question, Ms. Willis.
I'm sorry, what was the question, then, Your Honor?
Is there anyone else who knew about it? And then you can explain.
I don't know. I don't think so. I certainly didn't go out telling my business to the world.
Okay, so, the best of your recollection, you didn't inform anyone on the prosecution team that the individual that you had chosen to lead the prosecution team had a personal relationship with you.
So I
Is that
think
correct?
That's inaccurate. Your question is inaccurate.
What?
Because you stated that the person I chose, we had a personal relationship. So we had a friendship. We have all these distinguishing factors. Remember, when I chose him in November of 21, first of all, let's get this straight. Mr. Wade was not actually my first choice. That's no insult to him.
Your Honor,
No,
I
it is
don't-
you, because of the way you phrased the question. You said, when I chose him, I didn't inform people of a personal relationship. We have defined personal as romantic. It is an inaccurate way to state the question.
Then I will
as-
certainly restate it so it is very accurate.
Okay, and please do not yell at me.
You hired Mr. Wade for the first time on November 1st of 2021, correct?
November of 2021, yes,
Okay.
sir.
Your testimony is, whether one accepts it or not, your testimony is that at the time you hired Mr. Wade, there had never been a romantic relationship with Mr. Wade before you hired him, correct?
Yes, my testimony is that we were very good friends, but we're talking about the sex, so let's just don't.
No, I'm not talking about, I'm saying romantic relationship doesn't necessarily have to be just sex.
Well,
It can
I
be
don't-
dating, it can be holding hands, it can be any of those things that one might call romantic. I'm asking you whether or not prior to November 1st of 2021, there was a romantic relationship with Mr. Wade. It's very simple. It's either a yes or a no.
I don't consider my relationship with him to be romantic before that. I'm not a hand holder, so no.
Okay, that's fine. Now, let's move beyond November 1st of 2020,
Yes.
2021, excuse me. If I understand your testimony, there was no romantic relationship with Mr. Wade until early in 2022, whether it be January or February or March, early in 2022, correct?
I would say sometime between February and April. Yes, sir.
All right. Now I'm asking you about that time period when it became romantic.
Yes,
Okay?
sir. Thank you.
Okay. You didn't see the need, if I understand, to tell any of the people on the prosecution team when you had established a romantic relationship with Mr. Wade that the lead prosecutor, that is the man that was basically giving orders to others, was dating or having a romantic relationship with you, correct?
I'm going to object to relevance at this point, Your Honor. It's
Mr.
not
Say now,
relevant.
relevance?
Just to prove what we're attempting to show, that there is an issue on the credibility about the relationship. The failure to have informed anyone on her team that she was having a romantic relationship with the lead prosecutor, I suggest gives rise to that inference. That's the relevance.
The inference that
The inference that they were concealing this because it was not as it's been characterized to the court, and that in fact it started earlier than what they say.
all right, overruled. Mr. Say now.
I just want to make sure that we're clear. From at least 2020, me and Mr. Wade were friends. At least that time period.
Okay, I'm not talking
Okay, so
about.
no, I want to be clear because my credibility is being evaluated here, right? We were friends. We hung out prior to November of 2021. In November of 2021, I hired him. I do not consider our relationship to have become romantic until early of 2022. Because I don't know a date and time, I'm saying sometime between February and April of 2022, and very early April of 2022, because I know that trip that I discussed with you was like the first week of 2022, that the relationship had become romantic. I hope that answered your question, but I can't have it where, you know, we're saying something differently.
All right, so you've established the timeline as you put it. The question originally was, at that time, did you tell any other prosecutors?
I never tell people at work who I'm dating.
All right, Mr. Seda.
Okay. Did you take any trips to D.C. with Mr. Wade?
Never.
Did you take, okay, so you have no, what I would call personal trips or business trips to D.C. with Mr. Wade?
I never went to D.C. with Mr. Wade, personal, business, otherwise, never.
Okay, so,
I've never been in the District of Columbia with Mr. Wade, or Maryland, Virginia, the DMV as they call it.
so as I understand it, to be clear, any trips that you would have taken to see D.C.
That
would not,
was a pretty clear answer.
huh?
That was a pretty clear answer.
No.
Asked him
She just said no.
twice.
So you have a variation or something new to bring up?
I'll ask it and we'll see. Did you take trips to D.C. that were non-business during the time period that this case or this matter was under investigation?
I'm going to object as to relevance as it relates to the matter that we're here before Your Honor.
Well, again, the question already asked is, take personal or business trips. She said,
But that was with
Personal
Mr.
or
Wade.
business?
That was with Mr. Wade. This I asked her alone whether she took.
okay.
What's the relevance?
And what would be the relevance of that?
I'm trying to understand whether or not we have an ability to show a personal trip in which Mr. Wade is there at the same time. I understand her answer, okay? I understand her answer, but we have documents, we have records that,
Your Honor, I'm going to
Okay.
object to the documents of things that
Well, this could be something that's maybe not part of the record yet, but if he has I think there have been other things discussed in this case, and they have evidence that Mr. Wade may have been in D.C. at the same time. If you want to ask about that exact specific date, Mr. Sadon, you can do that.
I would reference to the court that that was not asked of Mr. Wade. Anything about any trips to D.C.
Sure. And so that's going to limit its merit and impact and on credibility. So, Mr. Sadon, ask the question.
So,
whether, I understand your testimony is you never took a trip to D.C. with Mr. Wade.
that's correct.
Personal or business.
That's correct.
Were you ever in D.C. at the same time as Mr. Wade?
I was not.
On personal or business?
No, me and Mr. Wade have not been to D.C. at the same time. However, since Mr. Wade has been on this case, he's been to D.C. Since Mr. Wade has been on to this case, I've been to D.C. What has not happened is we have not been in the District of Columbia at the same time. Now, the only thing I'm not sure about with what you asked me is if I've been to D.C. personally, because I got a lot of personal friends in that area. But I know that I have been to D.C. I did an interview at Howard University. I went to D.C. for that. Seems like I've been to D.C. one other time. Oh, I went to D.C. for the Global Summit. Actually, yeah, those were two separate trips.
My next question is based on her opening the door, and therefore I'll just ask it, and Your Honor can decide whether or not it's appropriate. When you went to D.C., did you go to the White House?
I did not go to the White House.
No. Well,
Apparently, I'm going to get the answer anyhow.
there you have it. Next question.
Okay. You indicated your best recollection was that your relationship with Mr. Wade, the romantic relationship, ended, you left it in August of 2023. That sound right?
That's the hard conversation. That's not the.
We've covered this. Next question.
And you characterized it as a tough conversation, correct?
Yes.
I'm not going to get into the conversation per
You
se.
should.
Well, if he doesn't want to, we won't go there. So, Mr. Sadon, next question.
You know, it's kind of hard to say no when you've got that opportunity. But all I'm going to say is, was it pre-indictment in this case?
So,
We know the timeline that the indictment was delivered.
okay,
Well,
but
actually,
and so that
I'll
we're
give you
clear,
that.
the
Okay.
physical relationship ended pre-indictment.
And is that when you were talking about the tough conversation?
But I'm not sure that the tough conversation didn't happen until after, but the physical relationship, so I'm sure if you ask Mr. Wade, because he's a male, he would say we ended June or July, because physical contact ended then. just in my mind, being a woman, it's over when you have that, like, hard conversation. I just think women and men think differently.
And I think the answer, Mr. Sadell, to your question was she's not sure whether it was before or after the indictment.
I'm not sure that was her answer, but let's see if I can get specific.
That is what I said. That's what I said.
I'll let you, next question, Mr. Sadell, if you need to clarify.
Want to say one more? The romantic relationship ended before the indictment was returned, yes or no?
To a man, yes.
Well, to a man, yes. To you, no?
She's explained this, Mr. Sadell. She's explained this.
And did the forthcoming indictment have anything to do with that?
Ooh.
Or was it just a coincidence?
Mr., let's go on and have the conversation.
I've just asked you whether or not it was a coincidence.
Had absolutely nothing to do with this. It's interesting that we're here about this money. Mr. Wade is used to women that, as he told me one time, the only thing a woman can do for him is make him a sandwich. We would have brutal arguments about the fact that I am your equal. I don't need anything from a man. A man is not a plan. A man is a companion. And so there was tension always in our relationship, which is why I would give him his money back. I don't need anybody to foot my bills. The only man who's ever foot my bills completely is my daddy.
Is there anything else you would like to add to that?
No.
Sure.
But I'm sure we'll talk about it further.
No, we're not going to talk about it further.
All right, no back and forth, Mr. Sadell. Next question.
My next question is something that that has to do with what I've characterized as the church speech. Let me just tell you what the question is, because I know that's not something.
Preserve it for the record.
Huh?
You can preserve the question for the record, but then we'll move on.
That's correct. Thank you. When you gave what I've referred to as the Martin Luther King weekend church speech, you know what I'm referring to?
A great honor of mine. That's a historic African-American church. Yes, I do.
Okay. Did you have handwritten notes with you that you were reading from during the speech?
And on second thought, Mr. Sadell, because you might have a number of questions about this, why don't we just bullet point what you would want to cover on this, preserved for the record, and then we'll move on to the next topic.
Okay.
Since I had laid out before that the forensic misconduct isn't a
So
subject
do
of the
I
evidentiary
not get
hearing.
an answer for that?
That's right.
Okay. Did you read your speech?
Well, no, Mr. Sadell, for everything related to any forensic
Oh, you just want me to stay
claims.
out of it now?
We're just not, we can do it in a bullet form if you just want to cover what you would have asked, but it's not in a question and answer format.
Okay, so I should do that at this point or do it
Sure.
when you're ready?
We can do it right now, so it's fresh on
I'm going to ask her about, did she prepare the speech? Did she have notes on the speech? Did she read the speech? When did she do this? When did she write the speech? Who was she referring to when she was talking about others? Who was she referring to when she said they? Who she was referring to when she spoke in terms of their, that is,
I would love to answer those questions.
Well, Ms. Willis, you could certainly do that in some other format, but for today, that's what we decided we're not going to cover.
who was she talking about that was playing the race card, and why she didn't tell the people at the church that she had had a personal / romantic relationship with the, all due respect the way it was characterized, the black man that she was referring to, and was the black man she referring to, was that Mr. Wade?
Okay.
That's that area of inquiry.
Noted for the record, Mr. Sadell. Next topic.
Okay. I realize that you've testified that you have no records that with regard to cash payments,
Yes.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
Would your bank records reflect that you withdrew cash from your bank accounts during the time period of 2020, 2021, 2022, or 2023? I'm not asking you, I'm just asking whether they would reflect that you withdrew cash from any of your bank accounts.
So the exact amounts?
No, just
But yeah,
that
of
you
course,
did.
Of course, I withdrew money throughout that time period, throughout my life. I've withdrawn money from the bank. Yes, of course.
Talking about cash from, that is that you go to a
Cash,
bank
right.
or you go to an ATM
Cash.
and you take cash out.
Either that way, or you go to Publix and you overpay, or you go to another store and you overpay. So yes, both through that, Yes, of course they would reflect that at times.
Okay, and so those records, if we had them, would show that, correct?
That throughout the course of my life, I
No,
took
no,
out money.
I was very specific. I said
Yes, during the course
2020.
of that time period, I would have taken money out, yes.
So, do you have a problem with,
I absolutely, yes.
you don't want the bank records to be made available for the court and the court
I'm
alone?
going to object as to the relevance, and this has already been addressed earlier as it relates to other records. This is an improper line of questioning. He's doing it for the purpose of harassment. Right, Your Honor.
I'm just going to sustain it on relevance. Mr. Sadov, if that's something you want to follow up privately, you can do that.
Okay. Last area, briefly.
Yes, sir.
You had contact with Mr. Wade in the year 2020, correct?
Ooh, I had some contact with Mr. Wade.
Would you explain when you say some contact? Please tell us, talking about 2020.
I had some contact with Mr. Wade in 2020. One of the reasons your allegations are so preposterous, or Ms. Merchants that you have joined, is...
Ma'am,
No, no,
I
no,
didn't
no.
ask you about the allegations. I asked you about your contact. That's all I ask you, okay? I appreciate that you want to say something, but I'm interested in, did you have contacts with Mr. Wade in 2020? And your answer so far has been yes, correct?
very limited contact because Mr. Wade had a form of cancer that makes your allegations somewhat ridiculous.
And I do appreciate the
I'm not going to
characterization.
emasculate a black man, but I'm just telling you.
I'm
that
sorry, what?
I'm not going to emasculate a black man. Did you understand that?
All right,
Well, I don't
let's
think
get
we should
back on
discuss
track.
further.
Mr. Sato, next question.
Trying to, Your Honor. Would you tell us on the occasions in 2020 that you had contact with Mr. Wade?
I'm sorry, I thought I had answered that. Yes, yes, sir. There were times in 2020 I had contact, but 2020 was a year I was running for office. It was a year that he was going through some serious medical issues, and I did not have much contact, but I certainly had contact with him in 2020.
Did you
It
go
wasn't-
out to eat with him?
Maybe, probably.
Did you visit him in any location, his office, or did he visit you in your office in 2020?
I am sure I'm sure, ooh, that's a very good question. I'm sure he came to 750 in 2020.
750 is,
Was my office.
okay.
Not often, but maybe once or twice. Maybe I went to his office once or twice, but maybe once.
And the purpose for going to his office would have been what?
Maybe we would have went to Mellow Mushrooms for pizza, or maybe he would have come for lunch. I'm sure we went by each other's office though, but not often, not a lot. We both grinding, trying to make a
But
living.
wait, I understand what you've said about the cancer, and I'm not going into that. But when you were going out with him to restaurants, or when he would come to your office, right? Those were not sterile environments, were they?
Oh, very sterile, because it
The
was
restaurants were sterile environments?
a lot of times we wouldn't eat there. We would pick up something and go in, but they were.
I'm listening to you. You pick up and take it to where?
Maybe eat at our office, but it did not happen much. That's what I'm trying to explain to you. And my office in 2020, nobody was coming in. I was stir crazy, so I would still go into my office. You remember when I started this, I said, I am not even sure if we came to each other's offices, but I am trying to be over cautious. So I think I can recall him at 750 a couple of times. I just think I can recall him at 750 once, but let's say twice. I have seen his office. I remember all the awards in the lobby, but I'm not sure in 2020 I went. I'm not even sure I went in 2020 at all. I just want to tell you yes, because I'm not sure. But I have a distinct recollection of him at 750. I actually don't have a distinct recollection of me at his office in 2020. But maybe I went to his office in 2020. Maybe.
Did you have ongoing phone conversations during 2020 with Mr. Wade?
Oh, yeah, I talked to, yes, absolutely. Yes,
Yes, no question about that.
no question. I talked to him on the phone in 2020.
I understood, and this is, maybe I was confused. The Belize trip was for
His 50th birthday.
his 50th birthday, and that was in
March. He turned 50 March 18th, 2023. If you look at the dates of the trip, I think we were there about 6 days. We stayed at 2 different locations.
and you paid for it.
100%. He said, not only, I mean, I paid for the hotel, I paid for the flights, I had a birthday luncheon for him, I paid for massages, I paid for everything.
And would those payments be reflected on your
I
credit
paid for
card?
the cash.
You paid them in cash?
Cabs. I was telling you all the different things.
I'm asking you whether or not those payments would be reflected on credit card bills of yours.
So there was about $500 that I think is reflected on a debit card. What my recollection is, I took about 4 in cash with me to that.
400 or 4,000?
4,000. But I remember I handed him 2,500, and then the rest was just the money we spent. I probably gave $300 or $400 to this guy who was a taxi driver. He would drive us every day around the 2 or 3 days we went. Took him to eat like it was my trip money.
And you had, to be clear, to end this up, the 4,000 that you've just told us.
But I didn't give it all to him. Remember, I only gave the 2,500 to him.
I didn't ask you that. I was going to ask you that 4,000 is part of your, my words, cash hoard that you had collected over time.
Cash what?
Hoard, H-O-R-D-E.
Oh, I thought you said something different, sir.
No, I'm afraid I wouldn't say that under any circumstances to you or in
All right,
court.
back on track.
The hoard, cash hoard debt.
I would not classify it in that way, but I have money at my house. Yes, sir.
And the money, when you had money at your house,
I'm speaking too loosely. I had money wherever I was staying. So I was not referring to my house in 750. I'm saying I had money wherever I was laying my head. Yes, sir. That was my fault that I wasn't clear.
so when you were at what we said the Yerti condo during the time period we've always discussed, that's where you would keep your cash.
When I stayed there, yes.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, I want to see if we can get through a few more defense counsel if possible before breaking for today. Mr. Stockton.
Madam District Attorney, I'm Alan Stockton. I don't think we've had the pleasure of meeting.
It's a pleasure to meet you, sir.
Madam DA, you described these various trips, and Mr. Sadow asked you about going to Washington. Did you and Mr. Wade go to New York?
I've gone to New York. I've gone to New York twice since I've been district attorney. I'm trying to think if it's 2 or 3 times. I went to do a domestic violence thing there for sure, and I was honored, and I went to the Apollo there. Those are the only 2 trips that come to mind. I went. He was not with me.
You also said that he was a world traveler and had been on many of the continents.
I've been to 6.
Have you been on any of those continents with him? Besides this one?
Where's Belize? What continent is that? I'm not being funny. I don't know.
Let's say, with the
I've been
exception
to
of...
Belize with him. I've been to the Bahamas with him. I've been with Aruba with him. Don't embarrass me. I'm not sure what continents those are on. Whatever continents those are, that's where I've been. I'm sure if I gave it some thought, I would tell you. But whatever continents those are, that I've been to those locations, sir.
But not Australia or any other continents?
I don't even want to go to Australia. I do know he took a trip in December to Australia. I have no idea, I don't know anything about that trip.
When Mr. Wade began working with your office,
Yes,
he had 2 other gentlemen that worked in his firm with him. Is that correct?
yes, Terrence Bradley worked for him, and Chris Campbell worked not for him. They worked with each other.
Did you understand what their partnership arrangement was?
No,
Did he ever make you aware of how fees were divided or anything?
no.
Now, since you have been district attorney, the 2 gentlemen that worked with Mr. Wade and his firm, they also had contracts with your office. Is that correct?
I probably had 2. No, I don't.
Well, I don't know if we've covered this in Ms. Willis, but I still don't know what the relevance would be of her testifying to this.
But I've had about 10. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want me to answer
Let's
or
figure
no?
this out.
Judge, respectfully, I think based on Mr. Wade's testimony, he had an interest in those contracts.
Sure. And then, but how's that been imputed to Ms. Willis?
I don't know if whether or not she knew she was giving him that benefit. That's what I was trying to explore.
Okay. Well, maybe we can start with that question, and then if she doesn't know about it, then the ins and outs of all the contracts wouldn't be quite as relevant.
Goes to lay a foundation for that, though.
Let's see where it
Respectfully,
takes us. Go ahead.
The two gentlemen that were in Mr. Wade's office, did they have what I think's been referred to as a taint contract?
So let me be clear, and I may get the names wrong. When I first became DA, the office was not properly staffed. And so I'm surprised any lawyer would take it, but I did a contract for like $60 an hour to help us out with first appearance. That lasted a few months. Okay, so I can't remember if Bradley or Campbell had that. I'm sure we can have records and I can tell you which one, but I just can't remember now. I liked their experience. Bradley had been a probation officer and a defense attorney. Campbell had been a police officer and a defense attorney. There's a reason I'm telling you this. Then that contract, like I said, it didn't last long. It was just, I was aggressively hiring. As soon as I got where I felt like I had first appearance, enough lawyers for that, I let them go. Then we had what's called a filter contract, but it was not filter for this particular case. I do have a lawyer who does the filter for this election interference case. When we're talking about filter, the contract they had that neither one of them has any longer, I now have another lawyer that does that for me. It was only for police brutality cases. It's for what I call so when I first got to be the DA, I had, the whole unit was called anti-corruption. It dealt with both elections and police brutality cases. I actually took a trip to Houston and visited the district attorney in Houston. They divided their work up, and I thought the way she was doing it was better than me. And so I made a civil rights unit. And so they did what we would classify as civil rights cases. Those are specifically the police brutality cases. When I first took over, I was told Paul had not filtered 5 cases. That was a joke. It ended up being the 101 cases. They weren't filtered, which is why I hired 2 of them. Eventually, we got it down enough that it was 1 of them. And then now I still have 1 lawyer that does it, but now I've been able to cut those cases down to like 30.
Can you tell me and help me understand what the purpose of the filter is?
Yes, sir. So what a filter is police officers make statements in the line of duty, and you are not allowed as the prosecutor to know what those statements are if they're done in the furtherance of their employment. And in fact, if you know what those statements are, you're basically disqualified from the case. You can't have it anymore. So what our policy is, I think I pay them like a $50 flat fee. They pick the case up directly from the GBI because that's where those cases go to. And then what they are to do is to go through the entire file. So the body cam, which is important because sometimes they'll make a statement to their supervisor on body cam, in the police reports where they write things. If it would be easy if it was just some statement of the police officer, but what you find out is these statements are embedded in it. And so what your filter lawyer does is they go through it, they either redact it out electronically or they cross it out, and then once it is crossed out, then they provide it to my team, and then we're able to look at it. That was not being done appropriately when I became district attorney. I thought that it had only been, so Mr. Howard had some Chinese wall thing that I didn't think worked at all, where allegedly those cases were properly redacted. That ended up being a joke. And so the 5 cases really turned into, I'm not gonna say all 101, but a vast majority. That is the work that Mr. Bradley and Mr. Campbell did for me. They did a really good job. All of those cases that we originally came with, they're done. Those cases they're not just done for Mr. Bradley and Mr. Campbell, they're done through my office. But obviously life is not stagnant. There have been new police cases. I do have a lawyer that is doing that work now. That doesn't work for me, that's same kind of deal. I have another lawyer that does filtering for this case, completely separate.
So in the same private office, you had a filter contract, then you had somebody else having handling first appearances and so forth, and then you had a special prosecutor. Is that correct?
I'm just not. Ultimately, the answer to your question is yes, but I'm not sure that they did it at the same time. The first appearance contract was either $60 or $90. I don't know really how I convinced them to be able to take that, but I think because it was for such a short amount of time. And then I think I pay my filter lawyers, which I still don't know how I get away with, about $150 an hour. And I want you to understand, the AG pays special prosecutors $1,000 an hour. So I'm a tough negotiator. Paul was paying people up to $375 an hour. I won't pay anyone more than $250 is my max. I have a lot of lawyers for what I have that work at $250, and I cap them every month. You can't go past a certain amount of hours.
Would you agree that if Mr. Wade and the two other gentlemen that were in his firm were splitting fees in equal thirds, would you agree that he would benefit from the tank contract and also from the other first appearance contract?
I would agree he would make money. Yeah, so to make money is a benefit.
Just a thought, guy.
Mr. Durham, if you're still with us on Zoom.
No questions, Your Honor.
Mr. McDougald.
I do have a couple, Your Honor, but it's a little awkward from back here. You want me to?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and make your way up.
Good afternoon, Ms. Willis. How you doing?
I'm very well. How are you, Mr. McDougall? I think this is our first in-person meeting, correct?
Second.
Second? Well, I apologize for not remembering you more clear.
That's quite all right. I'm referring now to exhibit number 21,
Yes, sir.
which was your financial disclosure form for 2022.
Yes, sir.
And it has a question which requires you to disclose any gifts or favors from a single prohibited source in the aggregate amount of $100 or more. Do you see that?
I don't, but I believe you.
It would be on page 2 in the middle, paragraph number 3.
Yes.
And what is your understanding of a prohibited source for purposes of this form?
I believe there's some classification of somebody you like don't have a personal relationship with that gives you $100.
All right, if you look under there
Sorry.
at subparagraph 2, Romanet 2, it defines it as someone that you know or should know is seeking to do or is doing business with the county, correct?
Yes, but yes.
That includes Mr. Wade as of the date you filled out this form, correct?
Yes, but he never gave me a gift of $100 or more. The only thing that I would say maybe went over that, but I don't think it ever did, is if we went to dinner and my meal was $100, but I don't think I've ever eaten $100 worth of food at a restaurant, because I would not pay him back if we went to lunch or went to dinner. But trips, I paid him back for. You know, I never thought about the money until y'all brought it up. And I would be less than honest that says I was giving him the money back because I was the district attorney. I didn't take gifts from him for a lot of personal reasons. Anyway, I did not take gifts from him.
And so your reason for not disclosing any gifts from Mr. Wade on exhibit number 21 is that the aggregate amount on a net basis was less than $100 in the year 2022. Is that correct?
I did not accept a gift of him of more than $100 in 2022. The one exception to that, because I want us to be clear, is we probably went out to eat multiple times in the year. If you're considering eating a meal, you know, because we went out multiple times, that probably went to the level of more than $100. But if we're doing tit for tat like that, I probably paid for as many meals as he paid for. And so I did not receive any gifts from him.
The question on the form
I understand the
in
question.
aggregate in excess of $100, and your testimony is that you did not
McDougal.
receive in the aggregate more than $100.
All right, Mr. McDougal, you can sit down now.
I don't believe she answered that question, Your Honor. She answered as to specific individual gifts.
To instruct counsel.
And you're not listening to my answer either, so we're done.
Very well.
Okay, Mr. Rice.
No further questions.
Mr. Gillen.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
A few questions here. I want to, you saw the book here, Find Me the Votes. That was shown to you, correct?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I would like to just tender this as an exhibit, number 22.
Is that your copy?
It is,
All right, what exhibit is that going to be?
22.
All right.
I'm making the
Is that,
evidentiary contribution here to this. Now,
well, I guess
Says that you
you're tendering it. Is it with position of the state?
That object is the relevance at this point. There's no relevance at this point.
Mr. Gillen, are you using this to confront her
repeat?
with prior statements?
yes, Your Honor, and
Okay.
statements that she made concerning her financial situation and laying the foundation for that, and that she gave these interviews to the authors. And so this would document that, and ask her, get this in the record, ask her questions about it.
Well, we could mark it for impeachment purposes. I'm a little wary of entering an entire 300-page book because I don't know exactly what every single line, if it would pass hearsay or relevance or et cetera, but I don't think it needs to be admitted as an actual evidence for the record for you to do what you need to do with it. So
Well, Your Honor, I understand. I just would,
it's marked as
again,
Exhibit 22, and we'll move from there.
thank you, Your Honor. Now, you were asked a little bit about this book before, correct?
I think Mrs. Merchant.
Ms. Merchant did.
Asked me some questions, yes.
And you gave about 6 interviews to the authors of this book in a sit-down?
No, sir.
You didn't? And
No.
Was it,
She answered how many interviews she gave, in her opinion.
how many, in your opinion, do you believe you gave, and how long did they last?
2 to 3, maybe 20, 30 minutes.
So your testimony is at most, you think that you gave maybe an hour to an hour and a half's interview to the authors of this book?
Oh, you mean in total?
In total, yeah.
Maybe, yeah. Anywhere between, definitely not more than 2-ish hours.
Okay. But you also were telling, when they were, the title of the book, of course, is A Hard-Charging Georgia Prosecutor, a Rogue President, and the Plot to Steal American Election. You've seen that.
hadn't.
Relevance.
Why is the title of the book relevant, sir?
And I had no,
And then I'm going to ask her whether or not that was the theme that they gave her when they talked with her.
Objection.
What the thing gave her, what do you mean by that?
Well, because they were sat down and they told her why they were there to interview her.
And why does that matter?
Well, I think it matters because it shows, but they want her to give her version of what her life story is. This is almost a life story of her. So that's why it's relevant. But if the court thinks it's not, then
No, it could be relevant to your issue of the forensic misconduct that has been alleged and maybe some of the motives at play when it comes to forensic misconduct, but I'm not seeing, again, what we're here for today was the relationship and or any financial elements of it.
correct. Well, I think it's clearly relevant to the forensic misconduct, also relevant to the personal interest in terms of the finances.
I didn't make 10 cents off that book.
Pardon me?
I didn't make 10 cents off that book.
Should I ask whether you made any money?
Okay, I just,
Didn't ask whether you made any money.
Do you have any other statements that she hadn't already been confronted with by Ms. Merchant?
Well, other than, I want to focus on, when you were telling them about your financial straits and you're living kind of month to month, that is what your financial status was back in 2018 after your election.
Mr. Gunn, we covered that at length. And you're at the end of the line. I'm sorry about that, but we've got to find new ground.
Well, let me move on to my point here. So the point is that what you're telling us is that you were in financial straits, but really that your testimony today is you had a cash hoard of maybe up to $10,000 in cash where you laid your head at night so that you would dip out and there would be no record of it, correct?
that's not what I'm telling you, sir. That's That's not at all what I'm telling you. What I'm telling you is that throughout the course of my life, I have always kept cash in my house. That cash has ranged from times, you know, my father would probably be ashamed of this because he would say it should be more, but that cash at times has ranged from $500 to maybe $9,000, and he would be like, that is not what I told you to do. I've always had that amount of money. What I've told you is that when I travel, you do better negotiating when you travel. If you have cash, you go to get the cab. They say, oh, we're going to charge you $300 for the day. Well, I got American cash. Will you take it for $150? And so it's my practice to take money when I travel. We're not talking about a whole lot of money. We're going to the Bahamas. $1,500 in cash is in my pocket, or at the most $2,500. Belize was actually probably the most money I've ever taken. And it was taken because it was a big deal. My 50th birthday sucked. His 50th birthday, it sucked. It was terrible. No.
Your Honor,
And
I'd
so
like to get back to some questions here.
I'm trying to answer it.
The
I
narrative.
think it would help if we.
So let's
get a question
move to the specific yes or no's here. Have you told us today that you would keep a cash hoard in your residence up to about $9,000? Yes or no?
And throughout the course of my adult life. And so let's even be more specific than that. Probably from the time.
Your Honor, I'm only asking for yes or no rather than
But we have already covered this, so I need to get to that point. I know you're laying the foundation, but it's already been laid. So
Yes.
The filibuster is here. I'm trying to move through the filibuster.
Yeah, but we're not talking about a lot of, and so it could be 2,000, it could be 1,500, it could be 7,500. It just depends on what you're doing at that time. What I'm telling you is when I traveled, I took cash. I find that when you travel, especially to foreign countries, the American dollar does well, and it's good to have cash. You can negotiate with the taxi driver, with the jet skis, and it's not a lot of money we're talking about.
Your Honor,
Okay,
we
understood,
need
Ms.
to,
Willis.
we need
Let's
to
get
cut
to it.
off the
Let's get to a
narrative
question, Mr. Gillen.
And so you have cash in your house, but you had a lien, a tax lien on your property, is that right?
I don't believe I had a tax lien on my property.
You have a tax lien on your property?
You gotta talk up louder, Mr. Hunt.
Cumulative, Your Honor.
Okay, we already covered that, Mr. Gillen. I need new ground here.
I'm asking the question, I'm trying to figure out how someone can have a tax
Then
lien,
ask that question.
but not use the money that they allegedly said they have.
Well, I think Ms. Merchant asked that exact same question. She said she didn't use the money to pay her tax lien. So what's your question that's new?
So I was going to build on that to say,
No more building. It's already built.
all right,
It's the same way you pay a bill.
So just put
It's
the
a-
top on it if you need to,
It's the
okay?
same way you owe a bill and go shopping.
well, now, have you ever used, did you say earlier that you used Cash App?
When I would pay Robin Bryant, I used Cash App.
What is Cash App for the record?
I don't need to know that for the record. Let's keep going.
Well, so if you're paying Robin with Cash App, why aren't you paying, allegedly paying Mr.?
There's no alleged here.
Why aren't you paying allegedly Mr. Wade with Cash App?
I don't think Mr. Wade does Cash App.
Did you ask him?
I think he's told me he doesn't do Cash App.
Okay, so that's the reason why you didn't use Cash App,
He's sitting next to me. I hand him the money.
because there would be a record in Cash App of your making payments, correct?
Yes,
Right.
but I didn't think that I was making a record in a personal relationship.
Because when you're filing your, and I know that I'm going to move into this financial statement here, you were asked just a second ago about your non-disclosure form, or your disclosure form of an Exhibit 21, where we agree that Mr. Wade is a prohibited source, correct?
What I agree to is I don't believe he's giving me gifts. You would like to classify these trips as gifts, but I've always paid my fair share on these trips, so I did not look at them as gifts. I don't think that what this is disclosing, and they can tell me if they mean something different, I don't think it means that if you go to dinner with somebody over the course of a year and it gets to 100, you're supposed to report it. If my understanding of that is wrong, I've probably been to lunches with a couple of people that over the course of a year they paid, I paid.
Let me, prohibited source means,
We already went over this, Mr. Gillen. Mr. McDougal.
well, Your Honor, I have to lay the foundation here before I can follow up with my next question.
I don't know why you have to.
Well,
It's already, the
okay,
questions have been made.
Then your 2022 disclosure form did not list any of the thousands and thousands of dollars that Mr. Wade paid for on trips that you were on. Isn't that correct?
That's because Mr. Wade was paid that money back, or he was paid due to the fact that I bought the plane ticket or I paid for the hotel. There were never money that he gave me. That wasn't the nature of our relationship. You know, there's so many men, and Mr. Wade is one of them, where the nature of the relationship is they're just paying a woman. The nature of our relationship is companionship and friendship. Despite the way people would like to paint certain women, it's just not true.
Final question. And not a single solitary documentary piece of evidence showing that you have withdrawn the cash to pay him
All
back.
right. Thank you, Mr. Gillen.
That's not accurate.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. McCullough, on behalf of Mr. Floyd. All right, and Mr. Cromwell on behalf of Ms. Latham.
Great thing about becoming last is most of your questions. I had one question, Ms. Willis. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
In the time period between February of 2021 and January of 2022, while you were staying at the Yurdi condo, did your father ever come and visit you during that time period at the Yurdi condo?
He did not.
That's all I have. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Cross, I would imagine you have a number of topics to cover with Ms. Willis that'll take more than 10 to 15 minutes.
I do.
Okay, then I think we've reached a stopping point for today. And so, Ms. Willis, I'd ask you to step down now, and I'd also remind you that you're not to discuss your testimony or that of any other witness until tomorrow morning. We'll be back here, and we'll begin again at 9 a.m.
9 a.m.
We'll do 9 a.m. this time tomorrow. Before we recess for today, I want to check in on logistics, and I'll ask Ms. Merchant, once the testimony of Ms. Willis is concluded, how many other witnesses do you anticipate calling?
And then we subpoenaed Delta records, the state objected.
We can handle that now. Ms. Willis, you can step down. You're done for the day.
You want me to leave the courtroom?
Or you can sit at the council table. We don't need you in the witness box. All right, so 2 witnesses, and then querying other defense counsel. I know Mr. Gillen, there was a potential witness that was objected to by the state, so there's another one there. And we can talk about that. Were there any other witnesses anticipated from any defense counsel? All right, seeing no show of hands, and then Ms. Cross, any witnesses on your behalf?
I expect so, Your Honor, and I expect that to take 4 to 5 hours.
Okay, and how many witnesses would you imagine?
Without committing myself to a final number, my best guess at this point would be 3 to 4.
Okay. All right.
You know who, I mean, I gave them our witnesses. I know we're supposed to give witnesses from evidentiary hearings. I'm guessing that one is John Floyd, but I don't know.
All right. No, I understand, Ms. Merchant. However, I don't think at this point there's any statutory requirement. We have the standing order that for expert witnesses, and if state doesn't want to extend that courtesy, then I think you're stuck with it. All right.
I'm certainly happy to represent that Mr. Floyd will be a witness, that the other witnesses will be impeaching of this year.
Okay. All right. Let's take up these last couple issues here before we break then. The issue of the Delta Airlines records. The motion to quash was filed by the state on behalf of Mr. Willis, I believe.
I didn't file a motion, Your Honor.
Oh, excuse me.
But my representation was that I just got notice of them, I think it was yesterday.
Okay.
And so now that I've had the review of them, I object to the general fishing expeditions. I've introduced a new record today that was from Delta. To my knowledge, that there's going to be no further new production in the Delta records. I don't want to burden the court with anything. If the court wants to take a look at it and see if there's anything different than that, I don't have an objection. I don't like the idea that we're just looking for anything. I don't want to put an obligation on the court, but I'm happy to agree to an in-camera if that's important.
And so, Ms. Merchant, I take it. All right. So, Ms. Merchant, I take it the purpose of the subpoena. I'm gonna need you to step out.
Step out, man.
The purpose is to show travel.
Right. Is it because you suspect there are other travel records, or just you think there might be something else in there?
Well, one is to prove some of the travel records that they traveled together. And so we have no problem, like I told the state, I don't need
I mean, what I'm saying is that we've heard about the trips today in detail. Is there anything else that's in these records that you're saying is going to prove some additional trip, or is it just further corroborating what really is kind of uncontested at this point?
there may be some additional trips.
But you don't know of any specifically. You just think there might be any. Okay. All right. Well, then let's continue with that. Then, if you want to send them or instruct Delta to send them to us in chambers, we'll take a look. And I think essentially, if there's, you can tell us, Ms. Merchant, what you think we should be looking for and what you think is relevant, and we'll do that.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. And then when it comes to Mr. Schaefer's witness, there was an issue raised about this kind of being a summary versus an expert witness, and so I reviewed the motions, and I think there was the essentially kind of the summary document that Mr. Gillen's witness would, the sole purpose of this witness to introduce. Was there something about, I don't know whether it's from Mr. Abadi or Ms. Cross, was there something about this attachment substantively that you think is inaccurate, or is it literally just a summary document?
I can't tell because the documents to support it were on a thumb drive, and there's tens of thousands of those documents. And so I don't know whether that is accurate or not. I can point to some characterizations on it that I would quibble with.
Sure.
I think the result is wrong, but I just can't agree to include the documents or someone testifying from the documents that I just can't verify. It may well be that there isn't anything ultimately, but I can't represent that and I can't agree. The document itself isn't authored or identified as being authored by any particular person.
Okay, give me a second while I pull it back up.
Thank you.
So what I was provided by Mr. Gillen is a 3-page document that starts with a timeline, usually dates, events, and sources, and it ends with an Excel sheet with some more figures. And Mr. Gillen, what do you have to say on this?
What we would tend to call Bill Selensky as a summary witness, not expert, not giving expert. And what we've done is that we have, we got the bulk of sort of what was in the download we got last week at the chamber. So what we have here is the source information over here. If we look at that, Your Honor, that's largely, all of this information essentially is material that is material of Mr. Wade. This isn't something that's some different company or bank account. And largely what it is a situation where it now stands, most of these source documents are already in evidence. And so, whether it's 1006 or frankly a demonstrative aid under 611.
Well, that's what I was about to say. Why couldn't this just be used as a demonstrative? What would the state's objection be then if Mr. Gillen was just to say in closing, hey, I put all these records together and here's my demonstrative?
I don't think I have an objection to that. I might quibble with some characterization in some language.
Sure.
But to call it a summary and to represent that the records is an accurate reflection of the records, I just can't agree to because there are so many records they were disclosed on Wednesday, and I just don't know.
Well, except, Your Honor, if you look at the sources, I mean, literally, we're describing things that were introduced today. They've seen all this. And the documents that we have sourced really came from Mr. Wade in his divorce case. So it's not like they're surprised. So we would ask that the witness be allowed to testify and put it in the record and put the summary charts in the record and have them admitted. And that way, off we go. This isn't a situation where we have a jury and they're overwhelmed with whether or not there is some kind of factual misunderstanding here. they could look through this probably at lunch and determine whether the source is accurate or not. The second sheet, Fulton County payments, that came from them. So to say if they can't determine or decipher whether the documents they gave to us is accurate, doesn't seem to carry the water. This isn't a situation where we have tens of thousands of new and different documents from different corporations, different banks, and then suddenly we put it on. We've done our best. We got these things last week. I've gone through them all, and we've called it down to what we think is a very concise summary chart for the board's consideration.
All right, so, Ms. Cross, what I would ask is, it sounds like most of the morning is likely going to be taken up with the remainder of Ms. Willis's testimony, as well as any additional witnesses from Ms. Merchant. And so perhaps we can use that time between then and then the lunch break to take a look and see if these sources are inaccurately cited. I mean, the characterization isn't something that's going to be determinative. I don't think I'm bound by whatever he describes as the event, but if this is just, I really don't really see much of a substantive distinction between a demonstrative and a witness, but if he wants to put it up through a witness, and it's not something that you need to rebut with expert testimony of some kind, then I really don't see this as being much ado about nothing.
Right, I'm sure you can understand why I couldn't agree.
Sure, no, that's fine.
Without having gone through
But I don't know if it's something that we need to bar outright until you've had a chance to look at it, if you see some incredible inaccuracy in it or something like that. All right, anything else from the state?
No, Your Honor.
Anything else from defense counsel? Mr. Let me go in order. Mr. Sadow.
One quick question. I understand the court had the bullet point where I was going to go. Do we need to put into the record the speech itself in the transcript, or is the court taking notice of what we've already filed?
I think it's extensively quoted in all of the pleadings. If you feel that's something that we need to have officially recognized, I think certainly we can do that. I don't know if the state has a particular version or a pleading that they want to double check for accuracy, or it can just be something that's as assumed as a matter of law as pleaded by defense counsel, and then we can make a ruling on it from there. But
Certainly no certified transcript that I'm aware of. If they want to give me the version that they believe to be accurate, then I'll certainly take a look at it.
okay.
I have a USB that my paralegal downloaded onto a USB drive to take.
All right, and that's also not something I think we need to have done by tomorrow. I'm not going to be ruling on. Yeah, I mean, I'm not ruling on any of this tomorrow. I mean, this is something that's going to be taken under advisement on all aspects. So the forensic issue we can bring up, and we may need to bring everyone back if everyone needs an extensive, not even extensive, but if everyone just wants to be heard in argument in some way, we're probably not going to have time for that tomorrow either. So my hope is perhaps we can just close the evidence tomorrow, and we'll take it from there.
I think we're going to want to have an argument, and I've already requested, depending on how busy the court reporter is between now.
Yeah, the answer is they're all busy, and we don't have enough of them. So
I don't know. This court reporter was giving me a potential of a reasonable time period. But is that what you just turned over to Ms. Cross? Does that also have a transcript?
No.
Or is it just having a video?
It's got a USB video. I believe that's all it is. But
again, I think that's something I'll just wait for direction from the parties on. I don't think that's something we've got enough to deal with tomorrow, and I think we can handle that as it comes once we've had a chance to take a look. Okay?
So no arguments on the motion.
I doubt we're going to reach it if the state has 4 to 5 hours of witnesses, and
That's fine, just a question of preparation.
yeah, I don't think that's going to be needed. Okay, Mr. McDougall.
Just a very short housekeeping matter. You ruled on Monday you didn't want to hear any evidence about the county ordinances and so
Sure.
forth. The statute 24-2-221 requires that they be put into evidence as opposed to being cited as law. So before the defense evidence closes, I would like to tender certified copies of those. I don't need a witness
Sure.
for that. And then I've got one other certified copy that I want to tender. I don't need a witness for that. So that would just be a little mechanical thing right before the defense evidence closes.
Understood. Any thoughts from the state on that? Okay.
As the representation, if that's what the exhibits are, then I'd consider it a proffer more than evidentiary, but
Okay.
I didn't want to upset the court's expectations tomorrow.
Okay. Well, Mr. McDougall, my expectation tomorrow will be that when I talk, I get to take prominence, right?
You're the boss.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Anything else?
I'm going to state, Your Honor.
All right. We'll be in recess 9 o'clock tomorrow. Thank you all. sorry. Give me ideas.
Sometimes a misty rain